Do you struggle getting your vocals to sound professional in GarageBand? Well, it's not GarageBand's fault, and if you took the time to get a great sounding recording, it's probably not the recording's fault. The issue lies in not having a system to shape your vocal to sound more professional, knowing which tools to use when, why, and how. So over the next 6 videos, I'm going to walk through everything you need to know step by step to create a more professional vocal sound, starting today with how to tune vocals to actually sound natural. Welcome back to the Band Guide, where we use GarageBand to create professional sounding music. I'm your band guy, Colin, and we're about to really step up your vocals. But first, I want to give you something. Over the next 6 videos, we're going to walk through everything you need to know to get a more professional vocal sound. But I also put all that information into a downloadable pro vocal checklist, so you can just have it up on the screen to reference next time you're mixing. So you don't have to wait for all 6 videos to come out to get started, and you don't have to keep checking back to the videos to see what the next step is. So there's a link in the description below where you can download it completely free, so be sure to pick that up. It's really going to help you out. But let's go and talk about how to tune your vocals to actually sound natural. Now, unfortunately, the Autotune built into GarageBand isn't really up to the job. You'll see why when we get into it, but I'm going to show you a very affordable option that's a total game changer in this video. Let's check it out. Okay, this is Waves Tune, and it's currently my favorite vocal tuning plugin. It's a powerhouse, and it's incredibly easy to use. Plus, you can typically get it for around $30, which is insane. But there are other great ones out there like Melodyne or Logic's built-in Flex Pitch. The important thing is that you have access to a graphical view like we see here, where you can actually see the notes that are being sung. But before we start using it, I know some people feel strongly against tuning vocals, and I definitely agree that you shouldn't tune vocals if they don't need to be tuned, but stick with me here and I think you'll see the advantages and that tuning, when done right, has its place in the art of making music. The ability to tune vocals has been around for a long time and has only improved over the years to be more subtle and transparent than ever. To understand why the ability to tune vocals is important, it's important to realize that the human voice is infinitely variable. Unlike a fret on a guitar or a key on a piano, it's very possible for a vocal to hit slightly sharp or flat of the intended note. When you stack that against a song full of guitars that are in tune and virtual instruments that are perfectly in tune, it can create a subtle but annoying dissonance, something that you might not be able to put your finger on, but that just isn't feeling right in your song. The ability to tune also allows you to prioritize the best take that captures the tone and energy that you want, even if it's slightly out of tune. But to be clear, you need to get a good quality recording that's in time and at least close to in tune before you start this process. Tuning is not a replacement for that. Okay, let's see what this thing can do. Let's start by letting Waves Tune hear the vocal part we're going to be tuning today.
I'll go back to school and just forget that I'm drowning in debt, but I can't forget. Used to have ambition and religion, and that gave me a vision. Now I'm just spinning. No more seasons, only darkness. Galileo set me off this. I'll come back on Monday to the office.
That's pretty cool, right? A little different than just putting an Autotune plugin on and hoping that it gets it all to the right notes. You can see exactly what's going on here, and we can actually then go in and tweak it, right? We can make it whatever we want it to be. I don't want to do that, so I just undid what I just did. But it's really powerful, really cool to see, right? So let's listen to what just a little bit of the default setting on Waves Tune sounds like. So I'll solo this vocal. Let's listen to this.
I'll go back to school and just forget that I'm drowning in debt, but I can't forget. Used to have ambition and religion, and that gave me a vision. Now I'm just spinning.
Okay, not too tuned sounding, right? It's really still fairly natural. And this is more or less just auto-tune at this point, right? We haven't really done anything to tweak this. This is where you get really precise and make sure that it's not ever going where it shouldn't be and make sure that it's actually pulling it to the right note. And right off the bat, there's a great example of this here. So these 3 notes right here, these should all actually be the same notes. Let me find that section in the song.
Used to have ambition and religion,
So when he hits that should actually be up here. Now, again, this is kind of set like Autotune right now. We've not tweaked it at all. But because we have this graphical tuning interface, we can actually go in and just bump that note up to where it should be. So I can just grab this and move it up to the note that it should be on. And now it's going to be closer. Right? That's cool. That's the power of having a tuning plugin like this that has so much more flexibility. But let's go ahead and break this down in a little bit more detail. So the first thing that I would do once I pulled up this plugin is I would actually select all, and then I would put this in the key of the song. So in this case, it's E major. If you're like me, I'm not actually great at finding out keys. I'm primarily a drummer, so keys have never been my forte. There are some cool plugins online, like Antares Auto Key. That's just a plugin that you can put on your song that will detect the key of the song. That can be really helpful. But either way, we need to know the key of our song, and that already tells us that this note should be actually up here because this note isn't in the key of our song. But there are times that even if it was in the key of the song, it could just be pulling it to the wrong note if they didn't get close enough to the right note in the original performance. Okay, so now that we have set this into the key of the song, we're going to tweak some of the global settings a little bit. So everything is selected, so I've selected all, and now we can change how many notes it can break up in a short period of time. So I typically shorten this up a little bit so it's not as many points of transition. That can help pull it closer to key so it doesn't fall out of a note really quickly into just slightly flat. And then the second area that I want to focus on is the speed and the note transition. So this is really where you're going to hear the tuning. So if I speed this way up, and just go basically 0 milliseconds for the note transitions. This is the speed within a note, and basically it doesn't allow any variation in the note. So this is within each note, not the transition period. Listen to what that does to the vocal.
I'll go back to school and just forget.
Right, so now we're getting closer to that T-Pain auto-tune effect. We can also speed up the transition, and this is going to be in between each individual note. So if I have this slower, you see the transitions are a little bit more natural. If I have this really, really fast, it's going to be really harsh, literally straight lines.
I'll go back to school and just forget that I'm drowning in debt.
Right, so we don't want that. We actually want to slow this down a little bit. So it defaults, if you hit Option and click on these, you'll put them back to the default. It defaults at 15 milliseconds and 120 milliseconds. I typically like to slow this down even a little bit more.
I'll go back to school and just forget that I'm drowning in debt.
Slow down the transition a little bit more.
I can't forget. Used to have ambition and religion, and that gave me a vision. Now I'm just spinning.
So that's already sounding pretty natural to me, right? That's going to make it sound even more natural than the default settings. There's another cool feature that Waves Tune includes, which is this ratio knob. So if we look at any of these individual notes here, you see the orange line was the original performance. The green line is the tune performance. I could actually go into this and I could set this all the way back to the original one. I don't have to have it tuned at all. So it still has a green line. That's just indicating that it's just going to let it do exactly what it did there. But if I put it all the way to the right, that's going to be completely whatever Waves tuning is determining it needs to be. So what I like to do is select all and play around with this a little bit while I'm listening to it to see if bringing this down helps it sound even a little bit more natural. Keeps a little bit more of that character. But there's actually a whole other way that you could approach this, and that would be to turn this all the way to 0, in which case all of these notes aren't being tuned at all. So if I turn this all the way to 100, you can see the little orange lines and the green lines are a little bit different. If I turn this down to 0, all the lines are identical to the orange lines, meaning that the tuning isn't actually doing any changing. It's just matching exactly what happened on the original vocal performance.
I'll go back to school and just forget.
And then I could go in and just individually set, like, okay, I think that note sounds a little bit weird. You can go through your song and find individual notes that are bothering you. This note isn't quite hitting right. So, for example, there was that note earlier, right around here, where he just didn't quite get up to the right note. So I could just go up to that one note and bring that tuning up. And then I could just even go a step further and tweak it a little bit more with these other tools. So this tool here allows us to bring it up just a little bit, right? And then it will default this speed to 0 and note transition to 0, so we'll have to set those a little bit slower. But now, everything here is untuned except for this one note. So you can get as precise and leave it as untouched as you want, but get as precise on specific notes as you would like, and that can be a totally natural, viable way to approach tuning. A second way, and what we'll probably do on this vocal performance, is actually to select all, we'll put everything back to somewhere around kind of this 95% correction rate.
I'll go back to school.
And what I'll do is I'll listen through and I'll just identify little areas where maybe the tuning is becoming obvious or it's getting in the way of the character of the original performance. So I know for sure in the back half of this verse here, I think it's around here.
Used to have ambition and religion.
That already sounds pretty good to me, right? That doesn't sound too tuned, which is cool.
Used to have ambition and religion.
But like right here, I can see he had a little bit more character in the way he originally sang it. So I could actually bring this ratio back and bring in a little bit more of that original character.
Used to have ambition and religion. And that gave me a...
Up here, I see he's actually not still getting up to that note even with this tuning. So what I can do is bring that up here a little bit, as we did just a second ago. Get that a little bit closer. Let's listen to this now.
Used to have ambition and religion. And that gave me a vision.
And then that gave, I think, is a little bit sharp. You can see it's closer to the top of that note range than the center. So I could use this tool here to bring it down just a little bit. Change the speed, so the speed down a little bit. Now listen to that.
And that gave me a vision. Now I'm...
And up here, the vision, for some reason the tuning is actually pulling it a little bit lower. So he's actually getting a little out of tune from the predetermined tuning effect. And so I can just reduce the ratio and get it closer to that center line.
That gave me a vision. Now I'm just spinning.
Same thing here. I want to keep the way he kind of falls down into that note. So I'm just going to reduce the ratio to be more the original performance.
Ambition and religion. And that gave me a vision. Now I'm just spinning.
Pretty cool, right? So you can go through. It's up to you how much tuning you use. You can use none on the entire performance and just turn it on for key notes where it maybe got a little bit weird, or you can have it on subtly throughout and then just kind of tweak it to sound a little bit more natural, allowing your vocal to just sound more professional. It's not going to have any distractions. It's not going to have any weirdness for the listener. If you do it right, it's subtle. It's not going to sound like tuning, but it will allow the listener to not be distracted by little weird imperfections that just make them feel a little bit off. Okay, one final note on vocal tuning. This is a pretty CPU heavy plugin, meaning that it takes a lot of the computer processing power. So I strongly recommend once you finish getting it all right, be sure to set your volume at 0 and make sure there's no plugins going on your master track. Solo your vocal, then go up to share, export song to disk, and then just export this out as a WAV uncompressed 24-bit. That's going to be full resolution audio, so it won't be impacted at all, but it will now have the vocal tuning printed onto it. Export this out and then just re-import it into your song and use that as your lead vocal track. Mute this. That's going to save you so much computer processing power. It'll be well worth it. Highly recommend it. Plus, it also gets you out of the ability to easily just go in and keep tweaking your tuning. Keep tweaking your tuning. Once you get your tuning where you want it to be, then you want to stop messing with it. You want to just let it be in the song and focus on the mixing. So what do you think? Did I convince you that tuning isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world? That's totally going to take out all character and tone from your vocals? I hope so. I used to really have a discomfort with tuning vocals as well, but over the years, I realized that it's just a tool, and it's a really powerful one. It's kind of like a tuning pedal the guitarist gets to just tune beforehand, except you can't do that beforehand with a vocal. So it just helps you keep things in tune exactly where they should be, but not necessarily taking out the tone or the character, the little subtle imperfections that made it a beautiful thing. But you need to have a graphical tuner like the one that we talked about in this video. So I hope this was helpful. This is something that really helped improve my mixes early on when I got a grasp around it and started understanding vocals a little bit better. And then also, it allowed me to work with vocalists better because I could see how they might be falling off a note in a way that wasn't working in the context of the song. And it allowed me to say, hey, let's try to hang on to that note just a little bit longer here, or let's not quite go into that vibrato just yet because it's going to actually push you out of key just a little bit. Whatever it is, you get such a more detailed understanding of exactly what's going on in the vocalist performance. And if you're the vocalist, that's going to really help you out. So maybe over time, you don't end up using any tuning at all. Really, really powerful. Now, if you don't already have it, be sure to grab my free Pro Vocal checklist from the link in the description below. It's really going to help you out. Now, before we go, I always like to hear from you. Has this changed your mind on tuning at all? Let me know in the comments below. Or if you were already tuning, has this given you another tool to consider grabbing that could be a little bit more powerful to get a more professional vocal sound? Let me know in the comments below. If this video is helpful, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next week with another video.
One thing